Problem 3, we're trying to figure out probabilities of genes in flowers. We know that if a flower is red, it must have received the genes RR from its parents. If a flower is white, it must have received the genes WW from its parents. If a flower is pink, it has received one R gene and one W gene from its parents. We want to know what is the probability that a pink flower, or a flower with an R and a W gene, mixed with a red flower, or a flower that has RR for its genes, will make a red flower. In order to do this, it's best to create a Punnett square, depending on how you pronounce it. And in this, we create this square that describes what genes will be passed on to a child. Now, each one of the squares that I'm creating here is a possible combination that can be made from the two parents. If we have a pink flower, we will have a flower that has an R gene and a W gene that it could pass on. And if we have a red flower, we've got a flower that only has R's to pass on. Now, when a flower, or anything for that matter, passes on its gene to its child, it will give one of the two genes that it has available. So the pink will either give an R or a W, and the red will either give this first R or the second R. Either way, that flower will give an R gene. So if we are in the first box, then the flowers will pass on both R and R to its child, and that flower will be red. If we're in the second box, we will get an R from the red flower, but a W from the pink flower. This flower will be pink. If we're in our third box, we'll get an R from the red flower and an R from the pink flower, again giving us a red flower. And if we are in the fourth box, we'll get an R from the red flower and again a W from the pink flower. Now, if we're trying to find the probability that these two make a red flower, we need to identify that there are 2 places out of 4 that will make a red flower. And since each of these 4 outcomes are equally likely, we can create this into a probability. And if we simplify this, we're either going to get 1/2 as a decimal or as a fraction. So the probability of getting a red flower from these two will be 1/2.